This is the Be the Solution podcast, and I'm your host, Maria Quatronne. And today, my guest is John Casmon. John is a real estate entrepreneur who has partners with busy professionals to invest in over $100 million worth of apartments. John also consults active multifamily investors to help them start or grow their business. He hosts the Multifamily Insights podcast and is the co-creator of the Midwest Real Estate Networking Summit. Prior to becoming a full-time investor, John worked in corporate America overseeing marketing campaigns for General Motors, Nike, and Coors Light. Welcome, John Casmon, to the Be the Solution podcast.
Maria, thank you for having me here today. I'm excited to be on this show and to share a little bit of information with your audience today.
I'm excited to speak with you today, John, to learn all about what you're doing in the multifamily space and as well as building a personal brand. So let's start with, how did you get into the real estate investing?
Yeah, so very interesting. I've always been interested in real estate, right? But I didn't know how to get into it going back to my time in college. Like many of your listeners, trying to figure out how to grow, how to scale, how to make extra money, went to school, got what I thought was going to be a really good job in advertising and marketing. When I was in school, one of the things that I did was I read this book called Rich Dad Poor Dad. Very popular book amongst real estate investors. And it planted this seed that real estate investing could help me grow my income and just provide more flexibility. One of the first jobs I had was actually at General Motors, and I was there from 2007 through 2011. And if anyone's thinking about that time frame, that is the same time where the company ended up going into bankruptcy and coming out of bankruptcy. So I was there during that period. And while I was there, I watched a lot of my peers lose their jobs, get demoted and go through a lot of financial issues. And I faced some of those issues myself. But luckily, I didn't lose my job during that time period. But what I was really feeling and going through was a lot of anxiety, trying to figure out, well, what do I do next? How can I figure this out, right? How can I be the solution? And one thing that came to mind was real estate. So you fast forward about a year and a half, I moved to Chicago with the intention of buying my first investment property. My wife and I ended up buying a 2-unit multifamily property. From there, we scaled into a 3-unit. From there, we started to really grow our real estate portfolio. But the thing that really got me going was, having that time in Detroit where we went through bankruptcy and realizing that I didn't want to rely solely on my W-2 job for my income.
Wow. So starting from scratch.
Absolutely, with nothing, just reading books and podcasts when they came out a little bit later, but blog posts and ultimately started to put together a strategy.
So what did that look like?
Well, everyone I knew who invested in real estate, right? When I read these books or, you read interviews, whatever it was, most of the people said they wish they started in multifamily apartments sooner. So the one thing for me was, okay, well, how do I start in multifamily? Most people start in single families, right? You buy a house, a rental, you buy it, fix it up, you put a renter in there, and that's kind of how you get going. But when I was reading that these people started multifamily, I felt or wanted to start in multifamily, I kind of put my focus there. So that house hack was really important. So a house hack is when you buy a small multifamily, typically a 2 to 4 unit, you live in one of those units and rent out the rest. And that worked well for me because as I was talking to different people, I started to learn about the advantages. One is the financing. So I can get residential financing. So I get the same loan product that you get for a house, you can get for a 2 to 4 unit. In particular, because I was living in this property, I could qualify for FHA financing. And that allowed us to put just 3.5% down. So as I was talking to, the person who became my real estate agent, and I was learning a little bit more about some of the nuances, all this became very, very appealing to me. So I could buy this house or this property. I could put 3.5% down. I could rent out the other units. I could cash flow. Someone else is paying my mortgage. It was a win-win, especially since I was renting myself at that time. So for me, the first goal was just simply to pay less than I was already paying in rent. So I was paying like $1,500 in rent. We bought this 2-unit property. Our mortgage was $2,400. The person in the other unit paid, I think, $1,500. So we were only paying $900 out of pocket. So to me, that was a win, right? And then if I were to move out of that unit, I could rent my unit for 1,700 to 1,800. So I would really be clearing now almost $900. So I thought it was a really good first investment. It actually appraised and went up in value. So once I realized this plan actually had teeth and I was able to prove it out, that gave me the confidence to go out and start really building a portfolio.
And that was back in 2011?
Yeah, that started in 2011. I think we actually bought that first one in 2012, but that process started in 2011. So very different environment than what we have here today, but felt really, glad that I was able to get started back at that time frame.
What happened next?
Well, so when we bought the 2 unit, we knew it was working. Again, we weren't really cash flowing since we lived in one of the units, but we were able to decrease our living expenses. So now we wanted to go out there and really prove this model worked. So we bought a 3 unit, which was purely a rental, and that cash flowed about $1,200 a month. So after all of our expenses and our mortgage payment, we were able to put around $1,200 a month in our pockets. So that worked out really, really well. Actually, it was closer to 1,800 now that I think about it. So that worked out really well. So for me, given that my plan was to be able to, first of all, supplement my income, but then really be able to replace it just in case something happened, I tried to figure out how do I accelerate this. We were saving our money buying these properties, and we would always run out of money. So we were bootstrapping it, and it was a long process. So as I continued to talk to other people, networking, I attended a lot of RIA events. So I did that, and as I talked to more and more people, what became clear to me was we would need to be comfortable working with other people, bringing on investors, partnering with people, JVs, those kind of things. So I wanted to do one more deal that was a little bit larger and more commercial before we took that path. So we bought an 8 unit building, and that 8 unit was a commercial property. We brought in a professional management company, and that kind of gave me the comfort to start really working with other investors. And from there, we really scaled. The next deal we did was 192 units. So that really changed the whole atmosphere of what we were doing and what we could accomplish.
So was that 192 unit building through syndication or?
Yeah, that was through a syndication. So I had never even heard of syndication when I started going down this pathway. Even with the 8 unit, that was foreign to me. And to give you a little more context, when we bought that 8 unit, one of the things I really wanted to do was work with a property management company since we had self managed everything up to that point. But I also wanted to learn how to run it more like a business. So that meant hiring this third party management company, going commercial, working with the lender, understanding the deal structure, and then I actually hired a coach to help, understand what should deal structure look like. If I were working with other investors, how might I structure this deal? And through those relationships and being able to attend more events and, connect with more people, I built a connection with another group and another operator who was looking to scale into syndication. So we ended up partnering with them on our first transaction. So that allowed us to really scale into apartment syndication.
Amazing. All about networking with the right people and hiring the best people to coach you through because you either going to learn yourself and trial and error and money in that, or you can learn from somebody else that's already done it, who's already walked the path, so to speak. So now fast forward to today, a decade plus later, where do you sit with the multifamily investing?
Yeah, so you mentioned a little bit in my bio, but we've invested in over 100 and, $130 million worth of apartments at this point, working with very busy professionals who want to get the perks of real estate investing without the headaches. And the key for me was I think back to, my time in corporate America, and a lot of the people I worked with did not have a plan B. And while I was passionate about real estate investing, and it took me forever to learn all the things I needed to learn to feel comfortable pulling the trigger, most people simply aren't willing to do that level of research. So for us, this is kind of a nice win-win scenario where, we need more capital to buy these apartments and do these deals. A lot of people are looking to diversify their portfolio and diversify their income. So we partner with these professionals on these deals. So that's kind of the main thing we do is buying apartments, working with everyday professionals on that. On top of that, we have a lot of people who are interested and question and want to know how we do what we do. So we do work and coach other people on how to do that. So that's something we do through our education program. We have a mentorship group. We also do one-on-one coaching. For us, it comes down to this. We believe in the power of real estate investing to help you change your financial future and change your legacy, change your family's direction. So we want everyone to invest in real estate. Now, how everyone invests in real estate really should come down to their own passion, their own capital, their own wants and needs. Some people may be just fine putting money in a REIT, very basically an extension of the stock market. For other people, they want to be very hands on. Maybe they want to manage their own flips. Maybe they want to, again, be their own landlord. But for other people, they may want to get the perks of real estate investing without really being hands on themselves. And that's where you look for more passive opportunities. Could be, again, through apartment syndications like with us, could be through private money lending with individual investors. There are lots of different strategies. It's really important for people to figure out which strategy fits their own investing persona best.
Right, because not everybody has different ideas, right? And different passions about what they and different level of risk and comfort level. So I think those things are also important. What is your risk tolerance? What is your comfort level for an
And skill
investment?
sets too, right? And skill sets, and I learned that the hard way because I tried to, while I was focused on growing the apartment building business, I still wanted to kind of get more capital. So I ended up doing some flip projects where I partnered with another developer. And unfortunately, he had some life situations kick in and he completely dropped the ball. But again, I hired him, so it's my fault. But when that happened, I became a flipper and I had a full time job. I had two kids in diapers and I did not have the bandwidth to really be flipping because that's a very management intensive business. You got to be on site, you got to make sure the crews are there, you got to manage the schedules and timelines. And that became very challenging with all the other responsibilities I had. So I think understanding the skill set, what you have based on your availability, your time commitments, all of that comes into factor when you think about what kind of investor you want to be.
No doubt. And you really need to like look in the mirror and say like what you're good at, what you're not good at. Starting like, at ground zero is difficult, and flipping isn't for everybody. Buying and holding isn't for everybody. They're not A lot of flippers don't want to be in the buy and hold. And then, apartments. I like apartment investing actually. It's more economy of scale than single family residential properties, especially if they're scattered sites and they're all over, a particular area. It's much more labor intensive to manage that than actually an apartment building.
Absolutely. That's the thing again goes back to what you said is, you have to understand who you are as an investor. And I think a lot of times people wake up with that, you don't set out to have 20, single family houses all over the city, but maybe one day you wake up and while you've been investing, wow, this is where we're at. And I think that happened to me to a lesser extent where when I had that 3-unit property, I remember one day I got quoted something crazy to rent to paint, and I didn't wanna pay it. I was like, "You guys are crazy. I'll paint it myself." And it was in the middle of summer, and I was at the apartment, and I'm painting, and my wife is with my, like, 3-month-old child, and she's at the park with him, and, she's calling me, and I can hear him giggling and playing in the background, and I was literally waiting for the first coat of paint to dry. So I'm watching paint dry while my wife is with my infant son at the park. And by the way, I'm doing this for my family, right? I'm investing in real estate. I'm doing all this so I can be a better dad. I can be a present father, and I'm spending my weekends painting at this apartment. And I sat there and I just thought about it. I'm like, the irony of this whole situation is that I got into this so I could have more time, freedom, time flexibility, financial freedom. Yet what I really have is a part-time job. I have none of the things that I said, right? I have the money, but if I'm doing the work, it's a part-time job. So investing really needs to be thinking about what is the money doing, not what are you doing. Because if you're doing it, if you physically have to be there, that's not really the investment. That's work, right? You're getting paid for the work you're doing. We want to be investors where we're able to put our money out there. That money is making money for us. And yes, we may have to do a little bit of the work ourselves, but being able to manage that, I think, is a really important aspect of it because it's easy just to wake up one day and realize you're just doing stuff, right? And you've got this portfolio, but it doesn't really serve you. You're running all over the city, you're spending your nights and weekends working on your real estate business when you really sought out to be a passive investor or to put your money out there on this real estate and it was just going to give you mailbox money. So I think it's really important for people to think about that and maybe take inventory, maybe at least twice a year to say, hey, is this portfolio going in the direction I want it to go? What do I love about this business? What do I hate about this business? And what changes can I make?
Oh yeah. Those discussions need to be had with self. maybe more than that, depending, but 100%. So, how did you get involved with starting this, the Midwest Real Estate Networking Summit?
Yeah, so you talked about like, my journey and my growth. And when I started to realize I needed to work with other investors. One of the biggest aha moments for me was I used to attend this meetup that my friend ran. And every month I was just diligent. I showed up every month because I was really serious and focused about growing my portfolio. And because this person ran it, she showed up every month. So I got to know her pretty well over the time. And when I first met her at the event, I think she had a 3 unit property and I had nothing. You fast forward 6 months and she had 9 units and I had just bought my, that duplex we talked about. And then you fast forward maybe a year or maybe year and a half, and she went from 9 units to 90 units. And that was just shocking to me. So I remember her saying that, and I could not wrap my head around that concept. So I invited her to breakfast. So we go to breakfast, and I say, the whole time, by the way, leading up to this, I'm just thinking, she must have had a rich uncle who died or a grandfather or something. Like, that's the only way she could have scaled like that is someone died, gave her a bunch of money, and she used it to buy real estate. So that's I'm walking into the meeting expecting her to say that. And instead, she tells me that she had a group of investors out in California who had heard about her and came across her and they wanted to invest with her. And they had some money and they wanted to give it to her and tell her, hey, go buy some properties and we'll partner together. And I was just dumbfounded by this. Like, it just seemed crazy to me that these people who had never met her, by the way, were trusting enough to invest with her sight unseen from across the country, based on the reputation she's been able to build. And that's how she was able to get the funds to go out there and buy more properties. So that was the first time I seriously considered it. And as she and I talked about it more, she kind of laid out more about the deal structure and things that work well with that, some of the challenges. But that opened up my eyes. And from that experience, she actually was getting ready to speak at another conference. I went out to that conference and met some great individuals. I ended up, kind of growing my own portfolio from there, buying that 192 units we talked about. And after about, I think 6 months or so, she and I were at another event and she was speaking at this event and we were hanging out and she was like, we never get these kind of events in our city. All we get are people trying to sell us something. And don't get me wrong, there's nothing wrong with selling real estate courses and things like that. But for people who are trying to learn and don't really know what they want to do just yet, I think it's important for them to get clarity. If you're going to make a big investment on education or something like that, figure out what it is you're trying to solve for, right? Are you trying to figure out how to find deals? Are you trying to figure out how to structure deals, raise capital? Are you trying to figure out how to, be a better flipper? Whatever it is, figure out where you need help and then make that investment. So what we wanted to do was bring a no pitch event to the Midwest where people could truly just learn from different strategies. So we got, Dave Van Horn, who's a, Philly guy, PPR notes. He came on to talk about note investing. A lot of great folks. Jay Scott has come out to talk about flipping houses. We had a lot of different people who would come out and talk about everything from wholesaling, flipping, raising capital, syndication, JVs, legal aspects, 1031 exchanges, all these different topics. And we put it together and it packaged up in a 2-day event, great environment. And that's something we've been doing since 2018. So we had a couple years off during COVID, but brought it back last year. Really excited for the event. Something we're very proud of. And I partnered with that woman who really was one of my first mentors who helped me kind of get started and scale my own portfolio.
And what's her name?
Bree Schmidt.
Bree.
Yep.
Hmm, interesting. So when are you scheduled for your event for this year?
So we have not scheduled it this year. We were debating the event. We're going to repackage it a little bit. So right now we're in the lab kind of figuring out what kind of experience we're going to bring to the table. As you can imagine, things changed coming out of COVID. Pre-COVID, when we created this event, none of this existed, right? So we were one of the first people to bring this kind of no pitch environment to the Midwest. They had some of these events out west and down south, but nothing in the Midwest. So when we brought this event, it was really sorely needed and we had a lot of great response. I think since COVID happened, there's more information available via, again, podcasts, videos, Zoom calls, things like that, virtual conferences and virtual events. So we had a great event last year, but we really wanted to step back and say, hey, let's not just do the same thing we've been doing because we've been doing it. Let's step back and figure out where's the gap? Where can we really add value? Because it just doesn't make sense to just do it just to do it. We want to really step back and evaluate that. So that's kind of what we're doing right now. We're trying to figure out what we want to bring to the table. So it'll either be something later this year or we'll bring something back for early next year.
Fantastic. Well, I definitely want to hear about that when you do get that dialed in, John. And one of the other things that I really wanted to talk to you about today was developing a strong personal brand. I think that is critical for anybody who is in any business space, whether it's, you know, real estate, law, accounting, marketing. Let's talk and dive into that.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that. And the thing that I want to get into first is, people may hear you say building a strong personal brand and they're thinking about logos and websites and, that kind of stuff. That's not really what we're talking about here. When we're talking
That is
about a
not what we're
brand,
talking about.
not at all. When we're talking about a brand, what we're talking about is the way other people see you, the way they think about you, the way they talk about you when you're not in the room. So you can think of a brand like Nike or Mountain Dew, and that can conjure up, certain images. But really, it's hey, when people talk about Maria, what kind of person is she? What kind of agent is she? What kind of investor is she? That's what people are going to think about. That's the brand. First of all, they have to know what to think of you for. Do they know you're in real estate? Do they know what business you're in, what industry you're in? You talked about it from, brokers to real estate investors to doctors to lawyers to all of these different industries. First, they have to know this is what you do. This is a service that you offer. This is how you can help me. Right. And then they have to go into, well, what are the main questions or concerns people have in that industry? And the most important thing across industries is going to be the relationships. This is a relationship business and people want to know that you're going to take care of them. When I think about our business prior to me getting into real estate, back when I was in advertising and marketing, my primary role was to be the business liaison between my company, which is on the agency side, and our clients. So when I left GM, I went to the agency business where I worked with, Nike, Coors Light, Mountain Dew as my clients. My job was to make sure the clients were happy. So in order to do that, I had to talk to him. What are you looking for? What does success look like for you? What are your goals? What are your ambitions? What do we need to do from a creative standpoint to make this happen? And then we have to check in. But they had to trust me. They had to trust the agency as a whole, but they really had to trust me as an individual to lead them in the right direction. That relationship is the same thing that we take to our real estate business with our investors. Our investors are investing typically $50,000, $100,000 or more of their money with us as individuals. There has to be a strong amount of trust built there for someone to be comfortable to do that. So that same approach, that same mentality, that's the brand. That's what you're building. It's the trust. Is this person trustworthy? Are they going to call you back? Are they communicative? If they reach out, will they respond? Will they be there? If will they be there 5 years from now? Those are the things people are looking for. So when we build a brand, the first thing is don't think about the logos and all that stuff. Think about who you are as a person and taking the megaphone to the world. That's what you're doing with a brand. It's what are people going to say about you when you're not in the room? So for us, when we think about that, one of the main things we want to do is be honest with ourselves. There are things that we do extremely well. There's some things that, we're just not the best at. We're not the biggest shop in the world. We try to be very lean. We try to be very efficient. We are relationship driven. So, my number has not changed in 22 years. If you've had my number at any point in the last 22 years, you can still text me or call me. All right. I try to make myself very reachable. All right. There's a balance to that, but I try to make myself very reachable. All of these to me, they reinforce my values. My values of being somebody who's present, who's going to answer the phone, who can have the tough conversations, who's trustworthy. I don't get to just tell you these things. I have to back it up by my actions. That's what a brand is all about, is taking those things that you want to be known for and amplifying that so the world can see it.
So true. Yet so tough to build. And in a
Yeah.
moment's time, it could all go poof.
And I
That's
think that the tough part there for a lot of people is the consistency. And it takes time to build a brand, to be recognized for something, but you've got to be consistent. You have to show up the same way. If and you think about, let's just pick on Nike, just to pick a brand. If Nike came out tomorrow and they were doing computers, I mean, some people would give them a little bit of credit for technology, but most of us would be like, "Can Nike make computers? Do they know electronics like that?" Right? If they had a Nike car, again, I don't know if I'd want to drive a Nike car. Like, I'm not saying they don't have good engineers, but I don't know, doesn't
oh,
fit
their
the
brand is
brand, right?
footwear,
Different
specifically
footwear, athletic apparel, it's competitive,
sports.
right? Like, athletic competition, I give them all the credit there, right? And that's the thing is they've consistently over years built that as, "This is who we are, this is what we do." So as an individual, going back to the personal branding, if you know me as John, the marketing guy, well, if I just show up as John, the real estate guy, you might say, "Whoa, wait a minute. How'd you become a real estate guy? Aren't you the marketing guy?" So there is a little bit of a transition that you have to go through, which is why it's so important for you to own some of that communication, to get in front of it, to talk to people, to do podcasts, to let people know how committed you are to this image of yourself, or this new profession that you're going to be doing. And that's really one of the hardest things with people in a personal brand. Now, if you went to college and you have a degree in something, well, letting people know that, that's going to easily allow you to be seen in that light. But when you're making a transition, it does become a little harder for people to, stop looking at you as one person or one thing and looking at you as something else. And that's why it is very important for you to be active in your communication and the marketing of your new brand. But again, getting out there and sharing what it is you want people to know about you and your business.
Didn't Michael Jordan play basketball and then baseball and then back to basketball?
That's right. That's right. You did.
And he realized that he is a basketball player, right?
And that's it. He's a basketball player, and he was not as very
He's
good
an
at
OG.
baseball. Yeah, he loved it, but, no one saw him as that. He wasn't the greatest baseball player, and, that was something he had to come to grips with, and that's tough for a lot of people, right? Is just because you like something doesn't mean you're gonna be great at it, and it doesn't mean that you're gonna get credit for it. We see that all the time with entertainment, right? With a singer or musician that wants to be an actor or wants to be, something else, and people are like, "No, this person's a terrible actress," right? And they're very quick to write that individual off unless they really take the time to build up that credibility and perfect their chops and go out there and show and demonstrate that to the world.
It's showing up and getting back on the stage, whatever that stage is for you, and being humble and being okay with being humiliated. I think that's a big part of it. Being okay with being humiliated. And most people generally, I say 99% are not willing to do that. Right?
I love that you put that out.
I do a live stream, short, anywhere between 2 minutes and I don't know. I think I talked once 20 minutes live every day since June 18th. And the consistency of it, sometimes people are on there watch it, sometimes they're not, that people watch later or they don't, whatever. But I'm not doing it for them. I'm doing it for me and hope that somebody hears something that inspires them or that helps them in some way. But it is humbling and it is can be humiliating because sometimes I'm not a dress, right? So I don't have a perfect form all the time, but you do get better. And so I think I've done 225 days in a row, something like that, of live video. So
That's
it is
incredible.
picking up and being humble and being okay with being humiliated.
Well,
And
I just
yeah,
want to say I love that you've done it because, I mean, you're saying being humiliated, but I would say, you know, someone is finding great information in what you're doing. They're finding either inspiration, they're getting education, and they're getting the information they're looking for to maybe make a decision. And I think the thing that for all of us to keep in mind is we get so caught up in ourselves, you know. We wonder what other people are thinking about us and all that. Most people are extremely selfish. And I don't mean that in a bad way. I just mean most people aren't sitting there watching, that content ready to judge you. they're trying to figure out, can this help me? And if
Well,
you're
every
saying
time I
something that
talk,
helps them, yeah,
I try to think of somebody that I could help, that this would help.
love that.
And so try to talk to them. Now, I'm not able to do it every time, but I say it's either going to be inspirational, aspirational, educational. So, and it's not always about real estate. Last week I'll talk about a movie or a game. I didn't talk about this Super Bowl yet, but I, um, I talked last week about Diana Nyad and her journey. She's the woman that at 64 years old crossed the ocean from
Oh, wow.
Cuba to Key West straight, not stopping. Took like 54 hours. Those waters, which is very, very, very difficult because of the way that I guess the flow is. I don't know a lot about that stuff, but I know it was very difficult. And one of the things that she says is never, ever, 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 ever give up. So it took her 5 times, five
Wow.
tries. I mean, you're talking about shark waters with sharks and jellyfish, and she was stung so many times that they said if you get stung ever again, you'll die.
Wow.
And she still did it. She put
Wow.
on this wetsuit and this thing on her face. It's crazy stuff. But she
It's
didn't give up.
incredible. Yeah.
She didn't give up. And that's what the Be the Solution podcast is all about. How are you the solution for yourself, for your family? Not giving up. It came from the pandemic when real estate was shut down in Pennsylvania for 10 weeks as not being non-essential. Now we're 4 years out from that. And mm, things have changed so much in a lot of ways. In some ways, things haven't changed, but a lot of ways things have changed. I think people's, how should I say, one, work ethic has definitely changed. I think that the pandemic really messed up people's psyche, so to
Mm.
speak. Things are just different and they'll never ever be the same again. But maybe we learned something that there is no certainty when we go through life thinking that everything's always going to stay the same. It's always evolving. And a lot of it we have no control over. So I say, John, control the controllables. And that is you. And that's pretty much it.
I think
So
you're spot on there, right? We've got to control what we can control. And I think part of that means being willing to take life by the horns, and it's very easy to look at your situation, whatever that situation is, and look for someone else to solve it or put some random event in the future and give it a lot of credit. Well, when this happens, I'll do that. Those things don't wait. Whatever you can control, control that, and you'll feel much better. There's a great book called The Four Agreements, and
Miguel,
yeah, by Miguel, and got his full Miguel Ruiz something Castro maybe, but it's a great book, and that's one of the things that and they talk a lot about is not making these assumptions. And if you can take control over your life, even in the small things, you will feel more empowered. You won't have as much anxiety. You will feel like, again, even when bad things happen, you can overcome it. And, I mentioned the flip projects where they didn't work very well for me. But once I realized that I actually had more control than I thought, things moved faster. When I was throwing my hands up, waiting for this developer to figure his life out, things looked very bleak. But I stepped in, figured it out, started making calls. Okay, hey, we're gonna take a hit here, but let's just get this thing done. Things got better, and I learned some things. And I think so many people live in a state of fear that they don't take action. When in reality, even those things that we don't want to happen, like losing money, it doesn't kill you, and you can learn from it and you can regroup and try again or make adjustments. You talked about that woman, right? She went across, the ocean. How many? You said 5 attempts, right? 5 attempts to get across the ocean. Most people if she would have went once and didn't make it, said, it didn't work. I don't think very many people would be upset with her, right? They would probably say, oh, well, you tried. At least you tried. But she tried again and again and again. And then she kept making adjustments. I need a wetsuit. I need to put this on my head. I can't get bit by this jellyfish. So she kept making adjustments and finally she succeeded. And we have to have that mentality in life. If you try something and it doesn't work, okay, great. Maybe try being a real estate agent. Maybe try being a real estate investor. Maybe it didn't work. Okay, instead of saying real estate doesn't work or hey, I don't like this, come back, figure out what adjustments you need to make. Hey, you know what? I was in the wrong market, or hey, you know what? I really don't have a good contract, or you know what? I really need to, find I need to be a buyer's agent as opposed to a seller's agent. Whatever it is, figure out what those adjustments are and then try again. And I think that's going to help you see more success. And you may ultimately reach the conclusion that, hey, this isn't really right for you, but learn why. And that's why I said figure out what kind of investor you are, because maybe you don't want to be hands on. Maybe that's the part you don't like. Maybe you don't like dealing with tenants. I get it. I don't either. That's why I work with the property management company. So figure out those things, and then you can take more control over your future.
That's right. Control the controllables. And before we wrap up, you have a podcast, Multifamily Insights. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so we are, man, we're getting close to 600 episodes on our show. So Multifamily
Wow.
Insights, we've been doing for going on 7 years now, and it really started as an opportunity for me to ask questions to other investors where I wanted the answers. The original name of the show was Target Market Insights, and I wanted to know how other investors were selecting the best places to invest. And I would interview guests, I would talk to them about that. And since then, it's really morphed more into everything that's important to the multifamily business. Working with brokers and agents to finding deals, to analyzing deals, raising capital, building a personal brand, marketing, all of these different things, scaling, hiring team members and virtual assistants. So all these different things we talk about on the Multifamily Insights podcast. It's available anywhere you listen to podcasts. And for me, the biggest benefit, and you kind of talked about this on, going live for over 250 days. Too many people get caught up on viewership or downloads and how many people are watching my show, right? The truth is, when you do an endeavor like that, one of the biggest benefits is you are learning yourself. You're making new connections with people. You get to ask questions that, help you become a better individual, a better investor, better in your business. And that has really allowed me to grow and scale more than anything else. Having a chance to constantly be in front of other professionals, asking them about their business, how are they looking at the market, what data points are you seeing, how do you interpret this, how do you know when to pivot. This has all made me a really sharp investor myself. But more importantly, I can go back and we talk about the personal brand. If you know nothing else about me, you can go to my podcast and you can look at the episodes and you will see that every Tuesday for the last 6, 7 years, we've released an episode. And for the last 4 or 5, I think 4.5 years, we've released an episode every Friday as well. So that consistency is so important because if you're going to do business with someone, you want to know that they're going to be in business moving forward. And that consistency is a great way for people to recognize that, okay, this is someone who's absolutely committed. And that stands out more than anything else to potential prospects.
Some people will say how you do one thing is how you do everything.
That's right.
I don't know. But this has been such a great podcast today, John. Thank you for sharing with us. I'm going to check out your podcast because I like to learn more personally about multifamily investing. I sell a lot of multifamilies, but you never heard of the saying, the shoemaker's kids with holes in the shoes?
Yes.
The real estate broker who, can't buy her own property. Although we do have properties, but
Yeah.
I should own more. But it's that whole thing. It's like I'm always helping others.
Yeah.
Gotta help myself a little more.
The funny thing about it is, one, I think if you're a real estate professional, you have to invest in real estate, even if it's just for the tax purposes, right? If you are a qualified real estate professional, the tax benefits are insane. Not to go too deep, but there's a 100% bonus depreciation is on its way back. It's already passed in the House and it's on the floor for the Senate now. And that
I
means
saw
that
that last week.
yeah, you should not be paying taxes if you're a real estate professional, period. And your spouse can have another job, like they can be a doctor and like it will help, mitigate your overall taxes. So I push anyone who's a real estate professional to at least look into strategies. And to your point, if you don't have the time to find your own deals, thinking about syndications could be key. Most of my biggest investors are the real estate investors. And I'm an investor, I'm an LP myself. I invest in other deals. So the reason is I can't find every good deal in the world. They can either. It's a timing situation. I've got money in a retirement account. So it's a great way to, again, you're connecting, you're learning about the industry, you're building businesses and relationships. I believe in it. So because I believe in it, I bring it to the people closest to me and I invest in deals myself. So I just implore everyone again, real estate, I'm big on it. I think everyone should look at investing in real estate to some degree. You just got to figure out what strategy works best for you.
100%. And for me, it's probably handing over money to somebody else. But I digress. I appreciate you, John. I appreciate your time. I thank you very much for sharing with us today. And I hope to talk with you and check in sometime later in the year.
Well, thank you for having me on, Maria. Appreciate our time today.
My pleasure.